Hi everybody, Dr. Hayes here. I thought I'd do a little video introduction and a run over of the syllabus. If you've registered for the class recently, you may not have gotten the email with the syllabus in it, so I would recommend that you go back to course announcements and look at announcement number 1, where you will find a copy of the syllabus. And I want to run over that a little bit in just a moment. I wanted to greet you. I'm currently in the UK in Nottingham, right in the middle of Sherwood Forest, not exactly in the forest, right down in the town, for the Society of Old Testament Study conference, which is coming up in the next couple of days. And so I thought I would really quickly get some introduction and some orientation to the class up for you via videotape. So my introduction is that I'm your professor for Old Testament introduction. When I'm not doing Old Testament, I like to run kind of a lot. And this year I finished up a double marathon in the fall and came back after doing the Marine Corps Marathon and the New York City Marathon with a broken arm, which was very clever of me halfway through. So I'm in the midst of recovering from that and looking forward to being fully functional by the time I meet up with you all for class. So for right now, we do want to go over what's in your syllabus, and let's take a look if you had a chance to pull it up. And you'll notice that our course is OT500, Old Testament Intro, so if you're not registered for that or interested in taking that, you might be in the wrong place. So I put in there that I'm available to you by phone 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., except for when I'm traveling, which will be the next 10 days or so. But I do reply to emails very frequently. Got good internet access, and I try to keep them answered within 6 or 8 hours of receiving them, but for sure within 24 hours during the week, and maybe a little longer on the weekends, depending on what time it is. In case you have an emergency, you may feel free to call me when I'm in the States, or to get prompt attention, put an urgent in the subject line of your email so that I'll know to look right at that. Okay, so you can read through this description and some of the other things more carefully, but like any Fuller class, we have a sort of formula here that we're going to follow and look at the different course goals and so forth. So basically, this class has to do with the literature of the Old Testament in its various literary, historical, and theological contexts. And in order to do this well, we've selected for you several books. So we're not covering the entire Old Testament, but the important books here of Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, 2 Samuel, Job, Psalms, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Daniel. And so we may be missing out on some of your favorites, but hopefully this class will sort of oil the wheels. And if you're interested in Old Testament, you can go back in and have a look using some of the techniques that we'll learn to use for reading. The outcomes are several. First of all, we want you to have a basic grasp of Israel's scripture. In other words, our Old Testament, what the Hebrew or the Jewish people nowadays would call the Hebrew Bible. We want you to understand some of the history and geography of that book in that time. Big in this class is number 2, the use of interpretive approaches to explore the literary forms and features of the Old Testament and the historical cultural context in which it came into being. Interpretive approaches are something that I've done with my own PhD work recently and have been very interested in cognitive linguistics approaches to text. And so that puts it on an interesting footing of how we conceive of what's in a text and therefore how we end up reading it. So it's one way to look at close reading. I've included for you a book section by Broyles, and you'll find it in the online e-reserves. And that probably would be the first article that you want to read for this class. It will take you more deeply into the 10 things about, which I've formed the class around. What kinds of things do we want to know about the text and how can we know them? In other words, all of this goes into various interpretive approaches. Number 3, you'll be able to assess hermeneutical issues that arise from the very diverse context of contemporary readers. In other words, how do we read? What do we see when we read? And that's a multifaceted kind of thing because we all don't read the same. So that's an important part of this. We want to be able to apply the Old Testament as scripture in a Christian setting, and that would have to do with mission and discipleship as well. And then you'll want to be able to have used this knowledge to interpret some key Old Testament texts, which we'll do both in the classroom setting and also in the paper that you'll write for this class. Now, the most interesting thing about this class, and I'm really looking forward to it, is that it's Hybrid Plus, which means we'll be doing a little less of the weekly work online than we would if it were a full online class, but we get our whole week of classroom instruction together with 4 hours of lecture and so forth in my topic and 4 hours of lecture in another topic. So it'll be a really busy week for you all, and I think really good to be able to meet up with one another. And I'm really looking forward to some of the lunch meetings and other sessions as well that sort of form this hybrid idea, because it's getting a big load of what it means to be in seminary and to be in community all at the same time. So I'm really looking forward to that for you and for myself as well. Okay, so a few things about the required reading. Lots of pages, 1,050 pages of required reading. Mainly, a lot of it is in the biblical books. 2 books that I'm expecting you to buy and have on your desk. One of them is called Out of the Depths by Bernard Anderson, third revised and expanded edition, which can be found all over the place because it's a textbook that's used frequently. And then the sort of main text for the book is Michael Coogan, A Brief Introduction to the Old Testament. I've got the 2nd edition on here for you to use. And that particular book will be interesting. If you've got any sort of preconceived ideas about Old Testament, he may challenge. And this is one reason why I like to use this book, because it gives alternate ways of looking at some things that sort of shake up the status quo. Now, remembering that Coogan, and I think I put this other places too, Coogan is not necessarily a straight-off theologian. He is interested in the text and in what is behind the text, and so really a fine example of textual scholar, not so much necessarily an evangelical Christian theologian. So be expecting some surprises in there. In fact, in previous times, I've actually put up a forum, and I think I've done it this time too, at the top of the page about, say what? There'll be times when you're going, wait, what did he just say? That's not how I understand that. And so when that happens, this is like the best learning moment. Why does he set you off if he does? And why does he provide maybe a perspective you've not thought of or seen before? So I'm very fond of Coogan. He's not everybody's favorite, but I think you'll be glad to have taken the time to sort of sort out what Coogan has to say. Now, all that being said, I wanted to try to keep this required reading that you have to actually purchase to a minimum. So then I went to our online access through the Fuller Library and pulled out some more things. And so you'll notice it's highlighted, available online through the Fuller Library. You'll have to do a library search to find these. And if you have any problems with that, the people in the library are great at helping you to get around and to find the different ones. The one that is a little weird to find is the Psalms introduction in the New International Bible, because the ebook there's in another file called Ministry Matters. Really worth finding, really worth reading. And so that will be important also for when you're writing up your final paper. And then Jean-Louis Scott, Introduction to Reading the Pentateuch. I think I've actually assigned only 40 pages. But if you're interested in all issues of the Pentateuch, this is really a great book. Both the JEDP theory and some of the theories nowadays that are sort of in conversation with the JEDP are taken on by Jean-Louis Scott, who is a very fine scholar. And you may want to think about reading a little more of that book, just for sort of the fun of it. Okay, and then there's actual e-reserves, which you'll find at the right-hand side of your course page. And these are articles and things that have already been found for you. So you just have to click on them, and you can take them and upload them, for example, to your tablet or to something that you like to read from. I like to make copies, like photocopies, and have something to write on as well. But it's kind of up to you as far as what your learning style wants from that kind of thing. But you may make, for e-reserves, always one copy for yourself. So you can have it in your file. You can make a paper copy. We can't hand them around. That's, it's like one per customer kind of thing. And then you've got a list of recommended reading as per normal in a Fuller class. We try to throw out quite a few things that would be interesting to you. And then a series of assignments. Okay, so we're going to have short video lectures. We're going to have presentations. I've thrown in a few musical scores to listen to, which is pretty fun. And there will be weekly forum posts, but they're not going to be every single week. So rather than 10 weekly forum posts that we do for the totally online class, I'm cutting it back to 5 and maybe 6. So you'll have a lot less of that kind of work to do, because we'll want to do some of that work when we're together, actually, and be discussing it. We've mentioned the required reading. You will do 2 projects. One of them actually came in here as a timeline. It's really an event line. And then you're going to have a learner-centered choice of either a movie review or a creative expression. And we'll want this assignment to be finished before our week together so that we can enjoy, particularly the creative expressions that come up. That's like my favorite. It's golden to grade that. And I really am looking forward to having a chance to have people share those creative expressions with one another. If it will be voluntary, but if you so choose. I've had interesting things, songs, poems, paintings, photos, all kinds of stuff. So creative expression, especially for those of you who like to do the kind of alternate to all the right-hand side of the brain type work, is really a fun thing. And that topic will be the psalm that you're picking for your actual paper. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. And finally, there will be an interpretive essay that examines the Old Testament text. I would typically look at this as sort of a researched paper. We've called it different things in the past, but now we're calling it an interpretive essay. So we'll talk about that. And that's also, a lot of that is already in the course shell for you. Okay, we have an assignment page by week. Notice I didn't put dates in there. The reason for that is that we sometimes reuse the same grids over and over again, and putting the dates in there, it's a lot easier not to put them because they tend to not get changed occasionally, and you really don't want one that says August 2nd because that would be very confusing. So I've left the dates off. The weeks match up to the weeks in our course shell. There are 10 of them. So you just need to match them up and go for it. And this is why some students really like to make a paper copy of this whole syllabus in order to be able to write things on. So it gets to be pretty handy. Now you'll have selected forums will be actually mentioned to you that we're going to do. You'll find them in our weekly assignments. I've put forums for every week, but we'll look at that as being topics, 1 per week, because those will be the sort of the pace that we're trying to keep up with covering the material. When you get to week 5, notice there's a project. It's a required project, and that's the event line of the Old Testament with highlights in the chronological order, due by Friday of week 5. So please have that finished before you come out for your class. Also notice I put in red the assignments for 2 Samuel with the projects, the either the movie assignment or the creative expression. And the reason it's put in red is because of the way that whole cell is really big. And last term, some people thought that it was really due later. Cancel the part about the being due Friday of week 8, because again, we want that to be due and ready to kind of talk over when you come to me. So if you get a minute to look at that again, just delete Friday week 8, and we'll put it's also due by Friday of week 5. Okay, so you'll have 2 assignments due by the Friday of week 5. You won't have as many specific forums beforehand, so you can get these other things done before we meet together. Okay, final draft of the paper is due the Friday of week 10. This is the week before final exam week. And the reason I do that is to give us a little bit of cushion just in case, because inevitably something happens. Something happens for a student. Last term it was me. Something happened. I wasn't very handy by the last week of the term. So we always want to give a little bit of extra time in case there's a problem with any of the papers and that kind of thing. Okay, so let's then look at the intro to the reading assignments, the next page here. Notice you're going to be reading ahead in order to prepare for the in-class week. So pay attention to the articles that you're going to pull out and which category they fit. I haven't really made all of those connections for you, but you can do them yourself if you print this out and notice some of them are on Psalms, some of them are on Lament, some of them are on the book of Genesis. Some of them move on beyond that. We're really top-loaded with some of this extra reading because that leaves a lot of room at the end for you to work on your paper. So you can get really busy at the front where we don't have so much writing to do, and then at the end you'll have more time, as you'll notice that the reading kind of peters out a little bit toward the end of the class. Okay, and again, I've gotten written out for you the page numbers in Coogan. I've written out for you the books that are going to be due for scripture. E-reserves, you can go in and there's a sort button. So if you want to find Bose, for example, just go in there and sort by author. And when you sort by author, it will bring up all the authors in alphabetical order, and you can pick out that particular article to read or to copy to read. Okay, so that's all of those things. At the end, I've included a really generic grading rubric. Okay, it's very generic. This is like the fuller basic grading rubric that we have kind of handed to us to work from, and I rather like it, so I keep it pretty much the same as I found it. Grade scale is there, A minus, B plus, etc. You'll notice that Fuller does not administer any D's as final grade, so we stop at C minus. Unfortunately, if you go below a 70, it will be an F. Okay, we'll talk more about expectations as the time goes on, but that gives you sort of the basic, just sort of the basic kind of thing that you'll want to know. Now, this has been really quick. If we'd been in class, we would have had a chance to speak with each other and you could ask questions. So if you have questions after going over the syllabus, please do send an email, or you can write them in the course questions forum that's at the top of our course page. Again, I have not posted in the course page an actual winter syllabus. We're going to use the file that was available, was sent out by email a couple weeks before class, and also it's stored in the classroom setting in the first of the course announcements. Okay, so you can go in there, download this, and have it for yourself to use. You can mark on it any way you want. Please do keep track of what you're expected we have done each week, and I will try to put a little bit more solid information week by week as we go along here. Since we're doing this in a hybrid format, it's a little different than normal. So again, if you have any questions, please do let me know, because this is my first time at doing a hybrid, and I think I've made some good adjustments, but we'll want to make sure we're kind of keeping in track with one another, and that those are pretty much really clear for you. So if anything seems unclear, anything raises a question, I'm always around at your service here with my fast email, and I will be really glad to get back with you at any time. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all in another few weeks, but we'll get the class started now, and please do enjoy this kind of reading week that we start with, because that really, to me, that was always the fun thing about seminary, was getting those new articles out and having a look. Good. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye now.